Hello. Thank you very much for taking time out of your day to attend this talk, attend the conference. I hope you folks are having a good and interesting time. So, what I would like to talk about for the next little while is how to apply Dismantle. How do you become a learning or a purposeful organization? So I just want to start with a few respecting IP, I guess. So Dismantle is owned by the Project Management Institute, as you probably all know. It was originally created by myself and Mark Lyons, and I'll be referring to DA throughout the slide deck. The primary reference is, of course, the PMI.org site. So please feel free to drop by there and see the wealth of information that PMI is generously providing. And these slides are available at this URL. I'll share this URL once again, but basically it's on slideshare.net, and the conference organizers also have this URL for you. So who am I? My name is Scott Ambler. As you heard, I'm one of the co-creators of the Dismantle Toolkit. I'm also the thought leader behind the Agile Data Method. The basic idea there is, how do you apply Agile techniques in the data space, including data warehousing, data quality, and of course, artificial intelligence, and Agile modeling. So how do you apply Agile strategies to architecture, requirements, documentation, and other important aspects of the overall software process? So I have mostly have a deep background in the software and IT space. So I'll be sharing some ideas that work well there. But frankly, none of them are strictly applicable to IT. They're more general, and I'll talk about transformation and the realities of transformations. So I'm going to begin with a very brief overview of Dismantle. Basically, I'm going to pick off some important concepts that I want to make sure that you're aware of. They may be different than what you're familiar with, particularly if you're familiar with Agile, but not disciplined Agile. And if you're not familiar with Agile at all, then certainly they will be different. And then I'll share some ideas about how you can improve at the team and at the organization levels applying Dismantle. Because it really is, Dismantle really is an improvement toolkit to help you to get better at what you do. So one of the interesting things about Dismantle is that we architected it. We purposely thought through how to communicate it, how to organize it, how to build it. And there are four views or four aspects that are absolutely critical. The first one is mindset. So how do you think? So what are your ways of thinking when it comes to how you approach your job and your life? And then the second aspect is people. Who are you? How are you organized? What roles and responsibilities do you take on? What team structures do you adopt? And what organization structures do you adopt? One thing I should mention, the size of the bubbles are an indication of importance. So mindset is the most important thing, most important architectural aspect, then people, and so on. And then flow. What are your processes? How do you collaborate together with each other? Or what's your collaborative way of working? And then finally, the practices that you follow. Your detailed way of working. So you need to address all four aspects when you're doing improvement, when you are striving to get better at what you do. One of the things, so when it comes to mindset, I just want to do a deep dive into this aspect for a minute. We went beyond the Agile Manifesto. For those of you familiar with Agile, Agile was defined in the spring of 2001 by 17 people who decided to get together to ski, and then they talked about what worked in the software field. And now this was a very different thing. What happened was, instead of talking about the way they wanted things to work out, they talked about what actually works in practice rather than theory. And they ended up writing something called the Agile Manifesto in 2001. So a couple of interesting points about that. First, it's over 20 years old. It addressed the challenges of software development at the time, rather than business agility, which is what we're dealing with now. And frankly, we've learned a few things in the last 2 decades. So the Agile Manifesto is certainly showing its age. And so a couple of years ago at PMI, we decided to no longer be constrained by the Agile Manifesto. Frankly, the problems of 20 years ago have been solved. We don't need to keep harping on them like many other people do in the Agile community. So instead, we step back and we ask the question, so given that the scope is organization level, not just software team level, and given that we've learned a few things, how would we describe the Agile mindset of today? And this is what we came up with. So the Dismantle mindset, or Dismantle manifesto, I guess you could call it. We don't call it that, but anyways, I guess you could, is defined as a collection of principles. So we believe in these principles, and because we believe in these principles, we make promises both to ourselves and to our stakeholders. Here's how we're going to work together. Here's how we're going to collaborate with you. And then finally, in order to fulfill these principles, we follow a collection of guidelines. So these principles, promises, and guidelines capture the Dismantle way of thinking. So the idea here is that we hope that this is a common way of thinking with a common mindset across your organization in order to provide a foundation for working together, like a common way of thinking, a common approach to things. Now, having said that, this is not sufficient. This is where we get into an idea that is probably fairly radical. It's certainly, I think, unique in the Agile community and many other communities, actually. So a common mindset is not sufficient. I'm sorry. I wish it was true, but it's not. So we can choose to observe that different people come to the table with different ways of looking at things. So the finance people look at the world differently than the software people, who look at things differently than the governance people, who look at things differently, once again, than the architecture people, than the security people, than the PMO people, than the procurement people, and so on. So different groups have different backgrounds, different priorities, different ways of looking at things. Yes, it's good to have some commonalities so that we can work together, but we should also embrace the diversity of thought, the cognitive diversity. So as a result, in Dismantle, we support domain-specific philosophies as well. So there's a collection of philosophies that are specific to finance. There's a collection of philosophies specific to marketing, and so on. So different groups in the organization will have different ways of looking at things. We need to embrace this. We also need to understand this. So when I first start working with the marketing people, I should have an understanding of what they are trying to achieve. They should hopefully invest a little bit of effort to try to understand what I'm trying to achieve, and so on, right? So we can better communicate with each other. So the Dismantle mindset is a bit more robust than what is captured in the Agile Manifesto. And I believe this is absolutely critical for your success as an organization and your success to improve together. Another philosophy in Dismantle is that choice is good. It's actually one of our principles. Dismantle does not prescribe what to do. So if you're looking for, the magic recipe book for, here's the 12 magic best practices to be effective at Agile. Sorry, that's not Dismantle. That's not realistic, actually. So instead what we do is we give you choices. So where the methods and frameworks like Scrum and SAFe will tell you what to do. They'll package up a way of working and call it best practices and say, this is the official way of doing things, and this is the best way of doing things, blah, blah, blah. No, that's just complete nonsense. Different people in different situations will work in different ways. This is observably true. This is something that, when you speak with your colleagues in between talks at this event, you can clearly see this. We know this. We're all adults, right? So the concept of a best practice is naive at best. Any given practice is good in some situations and is a phenomenally bad idea in others. So instead, in DA, instead of telling you what to do, we tell you what to think about. So when it comes to asset management, for example, reuse. We talk about, you need to find ways to publish assets, and here's several ways you can do it. You also need to fund the usage of assets, so fund the maintenance of these assets. And here's different ways of doing it. Now, these two lists here, one has an arrow. That's an ordered list. And what we're indicating there is that the strategies towards the top of the list are generally more effective than the strategies towards the bottom of the list. So in some ways, it's a maturity model. Now, these are generalizations. We can't guarantee that in all situations, a funded reuse team is going to be better for you. But in most situations, that's true. So the idea is that if you're doing process improvement, if you're currently doing team-based funding, well, there's two strategies that are generally more effective than what you're currently doing. So you might want to experiment with them. It provides guidance. Now, the unordered list, the list on the top, all we can do is tell you, here are some good strategies. Here are the trade-offs of those strategies. You choose the ones that are best for you in the situation that you face, because you're unique. Your team is unique. Your organization is unique. And you face a changing environment. So you need to do what's best for you right now in the situation that you face. And the scope of DA is the enterprise, the organization, not just software development. So, yes, we describe software development, but we also describe marketing and enterprise architecture and governance and finance and data management and vendor management and many other things. Because the way that a marketing team works will be very different than the way that a software team works. So try to inflict the same process on those two different types of teams, it doesn't make any sense. So you need to have a context-sensitive strategy for the type of team and the situation that they face. And more importantly, you need to allow them to choose their way of working because they probably know better than you do. So I wouldn't dare to tell a marketing team what to do. I'm not a marketing expert. I'm not on the team. It's not my team. Why would they listen to me? It doesn't make any sense. So we need to, give them the tools to enable them to improve, enable them to get better. So how do we apply this at the team? I keep talking about improving. How do you actually do it? Well, I've already mentioned this. Teams should be allowed to choose their own way of working. This is actually a fundamental of Agile. In the early days of Agile, we used to say that teams own their process. And what we were saying was that they get to choose their way of working because they know themselves better than we do. They know their situation better than we do. And frankly, they're responsible for achieving their outcomes. So they should also be allowed to choose how they're going to address those outcomes and achieve them. So how do you do this? Well, they need to assess, at the very beginning of a project or an initiative, they should assess, what situation are we in? What do we face? Who are we? They should choose a life cycle. One of the interesting aspects of DA is it supports multiple life cycles. It supports project life cycles. It supports non-project life cycles. It supports a program life cycle, an exploratory life cycle for creating MVPs. It supports Scrum-based life cycles, Agile life cycles. It supports Kanban, lean life cycles as well, because different teams in different situations will work in different ways. These methods that support only one life cycle, so Scrum supports the Scrum life cycle. Well, the Scrum life cycle is not applicable in all situations. Sorry. It would be, for example, it would be absolutely foolish to have your help desk staff follow a Scrum life cycle. Could you imagine calling up your help desk asking for help and being told, well, we can't fit it in this sprint. You're going to have to wait 2 weeks to get your laptop set up. Could you imagine that? It boggles the mind. So, they would follow a Kanban life cycle, of course. So apply the right life cycle for the situation that you face. And then you need to process. You need to tailor your process. You need to choose the right practices for you in the situation that you face. And then finally, over time, you're going to evolve your way of working because your situation changes. You learn, you get better. So why wouldn't you want to improve your process? So the first 3 steps you do early in the life cycle. You do, at the beginning during initiation, and then evolving your way of working is something you do on an ongoing, continuous basis. So I've said it many times. We need to embrace the fact that teams are unique. People are unique. Teams are unique. Organizations are unique. We all face unique situations. Now, having said that, we can still learn from each other. We can still apply techniques that other people are using. It's just that we'll do them in a different combination at different times and to different extents. So we want to do the right thing, or we want to do the best that we can in the situation that we face. So different teams will work in different ways because they're unique people. Another thing that I would suggest is that we can do a lot better than just failing fast. And failing fast is a rhetoric. It's a popular fad right now in the business world, and certainly failing fast is better than failing slowly, but it's still failing. So this gentleman here is failing fast at using this Sadoo or a jet ski or whatever it is, and I'm sure he's having fun up until this very instant. But this is going to hurt. So yes, failing fast is better than failing slowly, but it still hurts. We can do better than failing if we choose to. So how do you do that? Well, in Dismantle, we identified a technique called guided continuous improvement. And the interesting thing is that it's an improvement over the classic plan, do, study, act, PDSA or PDCA, depending on which version you follow. PDSA is an improvement over PDCA for those of you who are process historians. But anyways, we decided we identified a way to improve upon PDSA, and here's what we do. So when we're in the process of planning, you want to identify an issue, and instead of just making stuff up, guessing what we should how we should try to solve this problem, we can go to the toolkit. And if we know how to navigate the DA toolkit, then we look at these things that we call process goal diagrams. I showed portions of them earlier on when I was showing the how to choose practices. If we can apply the toolkit to identify practices that are most likely going to work in the situation that we face, then we can reduce the chance of failure. So, for example, earlier I showed this example of funding asset usage. Well, did you know that there was multiple ways you can fund asset usage? Did you know that some ideas are better than others? Do you know the trade-off? Did you know what those 5 or 6 techniques were? Did you know the trade-offs of each of those techniques? If not, then you can use the toolkit to very quickly read. Oh, and by the way, this is free. You can go to pmi.org and get access to the toolkit just by logging in. It's that simple. So anyways, with a little bit of reading, you could identify which of those 5 techniques is probably the best one for you in your situation and experiment with that. And because you've made a better decision, you're less likely to fail at it. So instead of failing fast, we can succeed earlier. So anyways, we choose the technique that we believe will most likely work for our situation. Then we run an experiment. We try it out. Then we measure how well, we give it a fair shake. Then we measure how well it worked. If it worked, we adopt it. If it didn't work, we abandon it. And hopefully we share our learnings with others, because if we discover, here's a better way, of funding asset usage, we should probably share it with other teams as well. And of course, we want to measure our improvement. Years ago, I worked for a little tech startup called IBM. I'm sure all of you know what I'm talking about. So I'm joking. They're not a tech startup and they're not little. But anyways, years ago, we ran an interesting study where we compared the teams that were doing process improvement, that were doing process improvement and measuring, that were doing process improvement, measuring, and then sharing their answers with management. And what we found was that the teams that were doing process improvement and measuring their improvement were doing better than the teams that were not measuring their improvement. But we also found that the teams that were measuring their improvement and sharing it with management were doing even worse than the teams that were not measuring at all. And what was happening was, because they were making their metrics available via a dashboard, they perceived that they were being rewarded for measurement. They actually weren't, or being rewarded for improvement, which they weren't, but they perceived that's what was happening. So as a result, they started focusing on the measurement on looking good rather than on being good. So you're better off. So the end story is that you're better off to do process improvement, measure your improvement, but keep that information within the team, act on the information, and tailor your improvement accordingly. So anyways, and that was published in the 2007 proceedings of the Agile conference in the United States. So if you want to hunt down that study, it's available publicly. So how do we apply DA at the organization level to do improvement there? So first of all, organizations need to adapt. If they don't, they're going to fail. Our environment is moving too quickly. We saw this during COVID. Organizations that couldn't adapt to the new ways of working presented by COVID failed. Organizations now, at least in North America, are struggling. Some organizations, I should say, are struggling to attract employees. They're not adapting to the new reality of people wanting to work from home, of people wanting to have more control over their environment. So the flexible organizations, the ones that provide flexible approaches to employment, are being very successful. Those that are trying to force people to go back to their offices are struggling. So it's interesting to watch. I think we got another year or two of this, I believe, until organizations either figure it out or well, frankly, disappear. One thing that I advise is you want to become what's called a learning organization. So when you're doing an agile transformation or even a digital transformation, even something simpler like a digital transformation, the goal is not to become agile. The goal is not to adopt Scrum or SAFe or less or whatever framework you think you need. That might be one step along the way. But the goal is to actually become good, to become a learning organization, to learn how to learn how to improve, and that's what learning organizations do. They're constantly learning, they're constantly adapting, they're constantly getting better. So it's not just about following a framework; it's about actually constantly improving. And I would also advise become a purposeful organization. It shouldn't be just about making money. How are you, what are you doing to make the world a better place? I think we're at a point in history, a tipping point in history where we've learned we've almost learned as a planet that we really do need to take care of the overall environment. We really do need to do what's best for humanity and not just what's convenient for rich people. So anyways, what's your organization doing to improve the overall world is a good question. So I believe the goal should be to become a purposeful learning organization. So what's the DA transformation strategy? This is something that's published in detail online at pmi.org. Once again, so we discuss a three-step three-step transformation strategy. First, you want to assess. You want to figure out where you are. What is your starting point? One of our philosophies is that you start where you are. So if you're currently a traditional organization, great, you're a traditional organization. That's your starting point. If you're currently doing Scrum, great. That's your starting point. We can show you how to improve upon Scrum. If you're currently doing SAFe, sorry about that, but good for you. We can show you how to improve that as well, because you can always get better. And once again, adopting a framework, adopting a method is not the goal. The goal is to become a purposeful learning organization. So anyways, determine where you are and then start improving. And the critical thing is to learn how to learn how to get better, because you really want to get to the point where you're thriving as an organization. And this will take many years. And the reason why this is 3 steps is that second step depends on where you are. So the way that an organization new to Agile will improve is very different than an organization that's been doing Scrum for 10 years, which is different yet again than an organization that's been doing SAFe for a few years. Different organizations in different situations will improve in different ways. So if you're looking for an 8-step magical improvement process that rules them all, don't fall for that. Don't fall for that. Okay, everything is contextual. Your organization will improve in a different way than the organization of the person sitting beside you. Just stop and think before you start to act. So anyways, the DA transformation strategy is context sensitive. There's a lot of details in behind it that I'm not showing here. I suggest taking a look at it because it really calls into question a lot of the advice of the transformation industry. And also, to be clear, the Agile transformation community right now suffers from an 80% failure rate. 80% of Agile transformations fail. And it's almost always because the organizations are looking for easy improvement strategies, and there aren't any. There really aren't. It's a lot of hard work. So luckily, Dismantle gives you a lot of options. So use the right improvement strategies for the situation that you face. So we support communities of practice and centers of excellence, hackathons, root cause analysis, and many, many other great strategies. So use the right strategies for you in the situation that you face. Do the right thing. So just to wrap up here before I go to questions. So your goal should be to become a purposeful learning organization. It's not just to adopt a framework or a methodology or even a toolkit. You can definitely do this, but it's going to be a lot of hard work. And this work will never end. Sorry about that. This is an improvement journey, a learning journey. It is not a destination, unfortunately. So you will spend the rest of your career improving and getting better, I hope. And the DA toolkit can help you to do that. It really does provide the ingredients for you to cook up a very good career if you choose to. I believe. I no longer have skin in this game, by the way. I don't make any money from DA. But I truly believe that the DA toolkit is something that everybody should know about and have, at least business people should have in their toolkit. And it's certainly something that project managers want to know about. So invest in your people, invest in yourself, get them trained in DA, learn this stuff. It's pretty straightforward, a little daunting at first, but it's pretty straightforward. And once you learn how to navigate the toolkit, wow, you'll get so much benefit out of it. So anyway, so thank you very much. Let's go to questions. I'm going to, you can call me on WhatsApp. I'll take questions there. So, because we do have some telecom challenges. Okay. Anyways, I will put my phone away, but I'll come back and get it for the next question. Okay. So, anyways, yeah. So the question was around, improvement around outside of IT. So yeah. So the domain doesn't really matter. The issue is one of improvement. You can always get better. No matter how good you are, you can always get better. You can always learn. You can always improve. So that technique, GCI, guided continuous improvement, had absolutely nothing to do with IT. That was a general technique. It was, understand where you are, identify a way to improve, try it out, measure it, act accordingly. Absolutely nothing to do with IT. The majority of the toolkit, and I did not share the overview diagram of the toolkit, but on that are a bunch of hexes. You can actually see it behind me, but I suspect you can't actually see it. But anyway, it's on my wall. It's a poster. But anyways, there's 27 hexes there, if I'm not mistaken. Or no, 24. I'm sorry, 24. And only one of them is software development. The others, the other 23 are not. So, marketing, that's not a software thing. Vendor management, that's not a software thing. And it's governance, not a software thing, and so on. So, different aspects of your organization can in fact improve. I've worked in many environments that are not really software. Construction industry, for example. Not really software. It's sort of arguably software, but arguably not software as well. So it really is about improvement. So look at it like that. And I'll go back on the phone now. If you guys could call me back, I guess. Oh, there we go. Yep. Okay, so the question is around, so where do we start with DA? Well, I would start with some training. So get more than, so it depends on where you are and what level of Agile expertise you already have. But PMI offers several certifications in Dismantle. The Dismantle Scrum Master, which is poorly named. I really wish they would change that. That's about process improvement. The team. It's an overview of the toolkit, but it's really about how do you be involved with process improvement as an individual at the team level. The senior Dismantle Senior Scrum Master, which is really all about leading process improvement at the team level. The Dismantle Coach, which is all about coaching teams, coaching multiple teams and across disparate teams. So coaching, how does the marketing team work more effectively with the vendor management team and maybe the data management team together, because you're trying to do something. I don't know what those three teams would do together, but say they need to work together. So as a coach, how do I coach across those three very different teams with very different priorities? And the fourth one is the Dismantle Value Stream Consultant. So how do we coach and develop value streams within the organization? So the idea is that there's 4 different levels of improvement. There's 4 different aspects or views of improvement. The first 2 were more junior team level stuff. The other 2, Dismantle Coach, Dismantle Value Stream Consultant, were more senior. Now the Dismantle Scrum Master requires no experience in Agile. The Senior Scrum Master, I believe, requires at least 2 years of experience in Agile. So you need to be, you need to have the proven experience and all that good sort of stuff, and pass tests and all that sort of thing. So these are certifications that you earn, particularly Senior Scrum Master, Discipline Agile Coach, and Discipline Agile Value Stream Consultant. So they're a bit different. There's a lot of Agile certifications offered by other organizations where you're effectively buying them. That's not this. So anyways, so yeah, that's how you can get started with DA. Just start learning. And frankly, if you don't want to, you don't even need to get training. There's, like I said, there's a lot of great material on the web. I suggest getting training because that's a lot easier and you get to ask questions and all sorts of stuff. But yeah, you can do a lot of reading about DA on the web. If you're a PMI member, you can actually, you should be able to download the Choose Your WOW book as a PDF, just like you can download the PMBOK guide and other PMI books. Otherwise, it's that book is $20. So it's a really inexpensive book, and that's an overview of Discipline Agile. I hope so. Yeah, I would love to get to Mauritius myself, and but hopefully, the PMI chapter there can, hopefully sponsor some DA training as well. Right. Thank you. Thank you. Have a great day. Have a good one, everybody. Thank you.